All right, so I'm pretty excited to have our one of the members of our team, as I said from the onset, one of my favorite people in real estate, who really focuses on the element of investing in real estate. She's an investor herself, and her name is Mia Romain. And so, Mia, welcome to the big show. We're going to talk about midterm rentals, and I like the topic of midterm rentals because it's something different. It's even hard to Google this. It's so
You
new, right?
can't.
You can't. I mean, you can't even Google it. And working with investors, we have to be options dealers. We always have to have different options. And we saw with the not this past Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl the year before here in Phoenix, the short-term rental market just getting out of whack. Everybody buying homes, trying to take advantage of the Super Bowl, and next thing you know, a lot of the short-term rentals, these Airbnbs, VRBOs, sat vacant for the Super Bowl because of people just outpriced themselves. And so we do have quite a bit. I think we still have a high inventory of short-term rentals. I think that number is going to diminish, and I think the short-term rental market's going to get really, really healthy again. But you started focusing on this midterm rental and doing so well with it. So take it away.
So the first thing that I just wanted to talk about is what is a midterm rental? Because if you try to Google it, Mike's right. You can't. You'd Google it and you're like, okay, there's no real definition of it. So by definition, it's essentially a furnished rental, less than a 12-month lease typically, and over 30 days. Now, what I will say is most property managers don't even handle this because it falls under what has been known as a short-term rental or our vacation rental market. But the laws are different, so we'll touch base on that. But knowing what a midterm rental is, who's going to be the ones renting them is a huge factor in it, and how you can convert your short-term rentals, because we are seeing a huge supply issue with the short-term rental market. We've saw a massive increase back December. I'll give you a quick stat here. December 2021 or 22, there was 5,000 vacation rentals on Airbnb in the metro area. January, we had 22,000.
Wow.
So if that talks to you a little bit about that supply and demand issue that we saw, that's where those numbers came from. That's why so many houses ended up vacant during Super Bowl in the short-term rental market. Now all of these people who have their short-term rentals are trying to balance out. I think in the next handful of months, we're going to start to see that healthy market come back. I feel like it's a fall thing that's going to happen as soon as people start to find that balance. And I think we're going to see a lot of 1031 exchanges happening at that time as well. So if you have not signed up for that 1031 exchange class, get in there because it's going to fill up fast now that we're talking about it so much.
Well, I think this is great too, and I want to put this into perspective for our audience. We're working with some of us work with clients. They come to us and say, I got this house. I bought it as a short-term rental, and I'm struggling with it. And now this gives us another talking point, another option for them. Or they have a client looking to buy an investment property with the intent of going short-term rentals. So I have a few properties that I set out for as short-term rentals, and they're more successful as these midterms. So for everybody that's listening, this is really just an idea of getting some different options out there and some different talking points. You're 100% not going to get all of the answers today. So at the end, you'll get Mia's contact information. I know she'd love to chat with you.
Yes. You want to hit next? I don't have the button. So just another huge thing is who rents these units. That's probably the biggest question when we talk about midterm rentals. Who wants to stay in a place for over 30 days and spend that much money? Because it is a lot of money. It's you make less than a short-term rental, but more than a long-term rental because they are furnished. And when we talk about traveling medical professionals or contractors, I'm going to quick plug here. The TSMC plant has tons of contractors. I have multiple houses that are filled with contractors renting by the room. That is a part of this, one of the midterm rental strategy options. Also, the Intel plant has a whole bunch of construction going on. We've got construction going on in Queen Creek. All of those contractors need places to stay for short term, and they're the ones that are filling my units and renting by the room, giving me my maximum profit with me and the clients that I service. But then, of course, there's insurance companies, and
That's the insurance companies are my favorite. So I have two homes that I have people in there that we got from insurance companies. One of them was a fire, so they needed 3 to 4 months to place. So the other one, I forgot what the situation was. And so the first one, I'm like, I don't know, I've never done this with an insurance company. I'm going to ask for $8,000 a month. Done. I'm like, what? $8,000 a month? So second one comes up. I'm like, all right, I'll try for 9. I don't know what that threshold is where they tell me to go pound sand, but it's not 9. and so this thing both of these would rent for $2,800 to $3,000 a month on the long-term rental, and payments coming from the insurance company and not the tenant.
And a little secret with insurance companies, that 3 to 6 months almost always extends. My neighbor was quoted 6 months to have their fire recovery in their property or remediation, and they were almost 2 years living in this furnished
Bring it on.
rental. And so that, of course, extends into a long-term.
Well, and that's funny
process,
because
but-
we just had that happen. Insurance company says, hey, we need to extend another month. So we're like, all right, let's up the rent 10%.
Based on market, absolutely.
and
That
they
is
took it.
That's another part of the midterm rental strategy. Is we
Yeah.
talk about short-term rentals, and we know that the market varies in the short-term rental market in Phoenix. Right? Summer times we see a huge decrease. Winter time, springtime we see a massive influx. We can adjust our midterm rental rates. When I write my lease, I have a clause in there that increases for the spring months. So I can make more money in my spring months, even though I've got the same contractor who's been in there for 3 months. They go to file their extension. Now their extension can go up, and so does the rate.
What's a digital nomad?
Digital nomad it's extremely increasing, and it's essentially people who work from home, which we know that since 2020, it's massively increased the work from home market, and people simply travel everywhere. Not even just the U.S. They travel everywhere and work. So the biggest need for a digital nomad is you have to have a desk in your property.
I've got to get my kids out of the house.
Get them in the digital nomad space.
I
give them
want to
an
be a
RV.
digital. No, I want to be a digital nomad. That's what but I can't. I've got fatherly responsibilities.
And of course, everybody knows snowbirds are huge in our market. So.
Yeah. They're still in town. I feel like everywhere I go right now, everybody's driving 5 miles an hour under the speed limit. It's driving me nuts.
Good luck.
All right. So,
it's not changing.
I want to get, we're going to get into the platforms because there is, and I'd like you to spend a minute or two. There is a difference between I am putting in a family into my house for 3, 4, 5 months as opposed to, and I know you do a lot of it and seeing a huge success with it, but actually doing room rentals. And so before we talk about these platforms, let's talk about the difference of what that looks like, unless you had a slide on that coming up.
I do have a little bit of a slide, but we'll touch base on it here because the platforms that we list on are Furnish Finder, Airbnb. You can still list with, there's contract companies, travel placement companies for our traveling nurses and those professionals. You can list on Zillow and the MLS. But I will say, for me, what I found is I only list on a couple of different platforms because, number one, it's easier to manage and I stay booked. I'm going to tell you, because I'm listing with contractors, listing by the room, I actually don't use most of these at this point. Almost all of my tenants have come through referral. So I've been able to I've got contractors staying in my place. The 2 contractors that have been there for over 6 months have kept my house rented by the room the entire time. I don't have more than a 7-day vacancy if a contractor is done with their job.
I want to clarify Furnish Finder because people who are familiar with Furnish Finder from a couple of years ago, it was typically almost all traveling nurses.
Yes.
And it has since grown from that, and it is definitely not just traveling nurses. It's people looking for these situations that are on Furnish Finder.
Absolutely. So Furnish Finder is specifically targeted towards those 30-day plus furnished rentals specifically. They've started targeting the contractors, which wasn't something that they'd done before, but most of my contractors have come from there. I used Furnish Finder 2 years ago because I was going to Oregon and my mom was having surgery and I needed a first story home for my mom to recover in. And it was cheaper to book on Furnish Finder and get a place for a month for the 2.5 weeks that I was going to be there instead of booking on Airbnb. Now, mind you, when I list my properties on Airbnb versus Furnish Finder, I list them very differently, and I list them at a much higher rate on Airbnb. There's additional fees and taxes and everything to go into, and my goal is my end number. So when I list on Airbnb, and believe it or not, I still get booked on Airbnb for that $8,000 number, and I go, I didn't think anybody was going to list there. Yeah. But I will say one of my strategies listing on Airbnb is I'm a super host for my short-term rentals. And I have that credibility, that 4.92 rating. So Furnish Finder is not good. I don't know if you can, I have one review for my 5.0 rating. Furnish Finder is not good with their reviews. So it's a lot more concerning and a little bit sketchy. So I can send any of my potential tenants a link to my Airbnb, and now I get that credit.
Credited. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Nick, when Shauna finally kicks you out of the house and you become a traveling nomad, I've got a room downstairs in the basement. You can stay with my 2 teenage sons.
I take back everything I said earlier.
So, hey, Mia, just a quick thing on this. Now, many HOAs, many cities, everything obviously, and this is kind of where midterm concept, because I've done a lot of research on this, came up, was they're trying to not have the property qualify as a short-term rental.
Correct.
And be able to rent it, but yet not at a long-term basis. So in that regard, are you finding that, because in Airbnb, back to 18 months ago, said that 45% of their Airbnb hosts were losing money. And that, again, is due to those city regulations, community regulations. So anything that you'd like to share with the rest of the audience with regard to that?
Absolutely. So, of course, and I'll touch base a little bit on this, but knowing the laws are so important, right? When you're buying an investment property, I'm on the real estate 401k group. Our entire strategy is investment. And so we've looked into the short-term rental market and everything for the last handful of years. Well, now they're creating a lot more restrictions, not just HOAs, but our city ordinances.
Scottsdale.
And it's getting crazy. Scottsdale, Tempe, and Surprise have all established new ordinances just recently on what you can do short-term rental-wise or how you can list. So this is not a short-term rental. And I will clarify, a midterm rental does not fall under short-term rental laws. Short-term rental falls under what's known as the Hospitality Act, just like a hotel. That's why we pay the hospitality tax. A midterm rental, I will say there is a gray area, but it does fall under a long-term rental law, which means that when we're writing these leases, when we're handling our tenants, not guests, Airbnb is guests, vacation rentals are guests, midterm rentals are tenants, we have to abide by the Landlord-Tenant Act and make sure that we're meeting those requirements. And I think that is where we're seeing a midterm rentals rise. And if you do not have a clear comprehension of what the Landlord-Tenant Act does, if you have not worked as a legal property manager or consulted with a property manager, you can get in trouble. Even if someone books their place on Airbnb for 3 months, you still have to abide by regulations that fall under the Landlord-Tenant Act.
All right. Yeah, and I would just say, too, just so that everybody understands some of the laws, a lot of HOAs have amended their CC&Rs to prohibit short-term rentals, whatever the case is. You always have to, and this is a great talking point, and again, having this is a real estate conversation to have with just about everybody, one of my investors. You always have to take, it doesn't matter whether it's in an HOA or not. If it's not in an HOA, chances are you can do whatever you want. Keep in mind, though, there are non-HOAs that have CC&Rs. Yep. So you always have to get a hold of the original CC&Rs, because the original CC&Rs is going to tell you everything. And if there is nothing, and now going back to the HOA, if there's nothing in the original CC&Rs that discuss rental restrictions, then any amendments are now null and void.
That's correct.
But every time I take a look at a property like that for an investor, we still have them talk to the attorney because I have the attorney go through and review the CCNRs. But let's
Every
talk
time.
about
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, money.
Okay, so of course everybody wants to know where the numbers land, and I will say there is a difference in profit from a midterm rental and a short-term rental. This is my actual property. This is a property that I purchased with the real estate 401k investment strategy, where you buy it, live in it for a couple of years, and then list it as a rental and buy your next investment property for me. Looking at the numbers, long-term rental, short-term rental, and then midterm rental strategies. I have two strategies. This one I started as a whole house rental option and very quickly reverted to the rent by the room option, which I'm actually up to the 4,200 mark because I now rent all of the rooms now that I know how much demand we have with our contractors. But if you look, obviously we've got a profit difference. My profit difference ranges, I wish I would have done cap rates. That would have been the smarter number here, right, right, Mike? Where's my cap rates?
We'll smack you around later on.
But the biggest thing I want to point out here isn't just the profit, but the time investment. So long-term rentals, of course, we know if we're managing our own property, we're going to communicate a little bit a month. It takes some time to get somebody in, but there's not a huge amount of time investment, which makes a long-term rental a passive investment. Short-term rental, I had this property as a short-term rental for 6 months, and oh my goodness, coordinating the cleaners, going through all of that. I self-managed. Do not suggest that if you have any other career at the time, but you can do it, absolutely. But there was a lot of hours, energy going into my short-term rental. And then I switched to midterm rental, rent by the room. And the first, of course, couple of months, it was making sure my contracts were all legal and consulting with lawyers and getting through everything. But after that, it was like, okay, I got somebody in, wrote up the lease, had them sign it, got them in, and I don't really have to do as much. And I over-exaggerated my 6 to 8 hours a month. It's actually probably far less, but I'm very involved, so I wanted that to be real. But if you look at the profit difference versus time, it makes a huge difference. And especially for me, I'm a happier person not having to deal with the short-term
The
rental
takeaway is the
aspect.
difference between the typical hold strategy of long-term rental and your midterm rental. I mean, look at the difference, 4 times the profitability.
That's actually way higher now.
Yeah.
My 1,600
'cause you're
profit.
based on
I'm
36,
yes. Now
yeah.
I rent 4
Right.
rooms instead of the 3 because originally I stuck with 3,
22,
thinking
you're more like
it wouldn't work.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So real quick, I'm going to skim through the next 2 slides because it is more numbers, but I just want to show you different rental properties and we'll touch base. This is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. So when we're talking guest houses in your backyard, the mother-in-law suites, the attached garages that have been converted, yes, those absolutely rent on the midterm rental market, and they're hot. This is one of the units that I have. It's again, look at the numbers, look at the profit, look at the time. We're talking about a difference in what, $500?
Yeah,
Don't make
900.
me math.
Yeah.
But again, you're
30%.
yeah, and the time, effort, energy, and everything. Next one is the other property that I have. Oh, did we skip through it?
No, I only had 2.
Oh, okay, that's okay then. But yeah, you see the difference. But when real quick, I'm gonna skim through this one. But what to look for? Smaller often rents better. So when you have those smaller 1, 2-bedroom units, the duplexes, those investment properties, they often rent for higher. When you can rent it for $2,200 a month to somebody, and if keys here are, do you allow pets and do you have a washer and dryer? Those are the 2 things, the 2 biggest things that midterm rental guests look for. They want a washer and dryer and they want pets, especially for our traveling nurses and traveling medical professionals who do this for a living. Those are keys. So if you can make that happen for them, you're going to get that higher rate. Now, mind you, none of my properties, not none, these properties are not Scottsdale. I'm not talking about high-end areas. I'm talking about your everyday home community basic place. It's not anything super fancy.
Well, yeah, and you have it here on the slide. I mean, on the investment aspect of it, hospitals and new construction. That's where you want to be for these.
How dare I say my strategy right now, and I'm looking for a client, but if anybody has a larger home for rent or for sale up in the North Valley. I'm shopping at the moment. But that's what we're shopping for. In the North Valley, if you want to rent by the room method, then you want the larger homes, the more bathrooms, the ample parking, those kinds of things. And those ones are my rent by the room strategy. You can absolutely use them as a rent by the home strategy, but you will make more money with the rent by the room. Of course, that does increase your hourly time going into the property. Big things to consider is furnishings. Just like a vacation rental, you have to look at, okay, I'm going to purchase this home, and what kind of furnishings do they require? Full home furnishing, stocked kitchen, those kinds of things. You absolutely need to make sure that you cover everything. I highly suggest an outdoor grill because every contractor spends evenings grilling. I literally exchange the propane tank probably more than anything else.
What if you had a keg?
No, thank you.
Okay.
As much as it sounds fantastic, the liability and having to deal with what comes along with the keg, I'm sure they would love it. But then basic things for every single room, you have to have a TV, smart TV option. Honestly, I attach my Fire Stick in there, and none of my TVs are actually smart, but they become smart when they get the Fire Stick. So those are expected. Everyone wants a lamp. That's the number one request. They love blackout curtains, especially for those traveling professionals that are working overnights or go to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening. This house, the whole house is home and in bed by 7:30. And they are
Todd's
up
in
at
bed by
3:30, 4
5:30.
o'clock in the morning. So,
Oh, here we go.
so they like to make sure that they can black out and do that. And
I usually
have
get
a
an hour and a
comfortable
half
place to-
sleep. That's true.
I'm going to touch on legal things to consider. Proper insurance. They do, again, this is that gray area where this is not defined in the insurance space yet. So when you contact an insurance company and you say, I've got this furnished rental, blah, 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 they're going to go, oh, okay, is it a short-term rental or long-term rental? They do not have a midterm rental space. But to have the proper coverage, you need short-term rental policy. Do not get a long-term rental policy on a midterm rental because they don't cover the proper things that you need covered when you have a furnished rental. And then, of course, knowing that you're going to have to accept payments from these leases.
Electronically, yeah.
Yeah. So how are you going to accept your payment options? Make sure that you know the legal requirements for your disclosures. If you do not have the proper legal disclosures for the Landlord-Tenant Act and what you are required to do, and for those of you, I know most of us are West USA agents, there are required documents that West USA will require you to have. And if you are your own property, you don't need this, but if you are managing anyone else's property within West USA, you have to make sure you are a property manager and go through all of the trainings and requirements for that. So don't offer to take on someone else's property unless you know what you're getting into. I did just recently become a midterm rental property manager within West USA, so that's where I'm increasing my business there. And then I'm going to say, like I said, I suggested always allowing animals, but you can never deny a service animal. So knowing the laws and requirements, because on a vacation rental, you can turn away an ESA animal,
Which stands for?
an emotional support animal. So on a vacation rental, it falls under the Hospitality Act, and recent laws have allowed you to say you do not allow an ESA. You cannot deny a service animal. I'm not going to go into this super detailed. This is my process. You can glance at it and follow the slides later if you want to know what I do in order to bring on a new midterm rental. But I do a full phone interview before they come in. Also, they don't get to tour the property before they arrive. So it's very, very, very important that you have proper pictures. They want to see the room from every angle. If you have videos, that's super important. And then right now, my process is actually I meet with them to do the check-in process. So I literally show up at the property, have them fill out the lease and sign the lease in person so I can go over everything with them. And so far, I have had an amazing experience.
Is there ever a problem in a room rental, short midterm, that based on who's renting the other rooms?
Not yet is my answer, because there's always a yet, right? We know that there's no way to 100% safeguard, but I will say that the way that I've created my lease and on a shared room, there is a roommate agreement, and that roommate agreement is actually framed and posted in the laundry room of the property. Of as much as we shouldn't have to do this, it literally lists common courtesies. The things that you shouldn't ever have to think about in a roommate situation are all listed in specifics. So, no, not yet. I've had a maximum of 4 people do not know. No, not 4 people, 4 rooms, because this rental strategy right now, my contractors share rooms. So in this property, in one of my properties, I have 2 bedrooms have roommates in them. So 2 beds, 2 gentlemen, and then the other 2 rooms have 2 other gentlemen in them. So I have 6 men in one room or one house, and all get along.
All right. Okay. So
Skip this.
skip that. Okay. So so this is an example of what's coming up, and some of the things that you're looking for, because typically as an agent, and in this situation, I'd fall myself in this category of, I look at this and say, okay, this is great for Phoenix. We're bringing a lot of jobs here. That might be a place I might want to invest in, because I would anticipate, no guarantees, but I would anticipate property values in this specific area going up at a higher rate than other places
Absolutely.
in the valley. But for you, going back to midterm rentals, it's like, okay, where's the opportunity here for investors?
We look at exit strategies, right? Every time we are talking to an investor, we talk about what the exit strategy is. And if you're looking at midterm rentals as an option, as I said, there's 4 different, there's multiple, because you can always look at flips and everything too. But looking at those additional exit strategies, this just gives you another option. And if you're able to make more money than a long-term rental without having to go through the hassles and wear and tear of a short-term rental, why not consider it? So my goal as a property manager in this, my goal is to make sure that you have the best opportunities as possible to know all of the details and what your exit strategy is going to be and how much money you can make.
So we talked about on the 3-pack, just going back to having real estate conversations. How is this throwing this into your arsenal of conversations changed your conversations? I mean, because I'm sitting here, you and I, we talk about this all the time, and you train our team specifically on this stuff. And every time I'm having this conversation with you, I feel like there's very few other agents out there. I'm not going to say you're the only one, but there's very few agents out there that I can have this type of conversation with. And I can only think that's part of having those real estate conversations and bringing something unique. Because you can have a conversation with an investor about this, and they may not want to do it. But that's not necessarily the point. You've had now a deeper real estate conversation, and they will want to do something.
The difference is this is such an unknown market that I can have a conversation that most people can't. So like you said, it just engages that deeper conversation. I think also I'm attending, we talked about networking, right? Get out there and have those real estate conversations. I'm attending networking groups that are short-term rental networking groups and talking to them about a midterm rental, and they go, what is that? I'm talking about investors who have been a part of the short-term rental market for 5 years still don't know what a midterm rental is.
Okay, Mia, we came up against the clock here. We are going to, this will be on YouTube, so if you've missed some of those slides, you want to go back, you can always go on YouTube. I think it's posted to the Facebook pages. We will splice this section of the podcast out and make that available. You didn't create a slide with your contact information, and so I know a lot of people are going to have some questions, so Nick messaged that out to everybody and posted your email, so if you want to get a hold of Mia with some additional questions.
Absolutely.
All right.
Contact me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or consult.
Or you can call 602-942-4200. Her name is, well, I don't know how West USA probably knows you.
Mia Romain is fine.
Okay, I didn't know whether they know you by Amelia. But Mia Romain, and they will get you in contact with her. Mia, thank you so much. Leave everybody with the quote of the day. Do the best you can in every task, no matter how unimportant it may seem at the time. No one learns more about a problem than the person at the bottom. That's you, Nick.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow. You said no short jokes.
He's in that's right.
I know. That's not a short joke. That's just a straight out insult.
She's from Arizona, by the way. Sandra Day O'Connor's from Arizona.
If you don't know that, then...
Well, a lot of people don't, so I'm
right.
just saying.
All right. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Go out, sell a home.